Alrighty. So, my name is Anya. I am currently studying a diploma of Montessori education, focusing on kids that are 0 to 3 years old. And I had the idea that it would be helpful for my studies and for anyone else that's interested to record my readings that are necessary for my study. So the first thing I'll be reading from is The Absorbant Mind. That's the 1995 edition by Maria Montessori. And we'll be starting at page 108, which is chapter 10, Some Thoughts on Language. So that's the unit of study I'll be starting this year, which is the development of language. All right. Let us turn now to the child's development of language. Some reflection on this is necessary. Otherwise, we may fail to see its connection with social life. Not only does it fuse men into groups and nations, but it is the central point of difference between the human species and all others. Language lies at the root of that transformation of the environment that we call civilization. Human life is not wholly instinctive like that of the animals. No one can predict what a given baby will do in the world. But without mutual comprehension with others, it's pretty clear that he would not be able to do very much. The power to think is not enough. However intelligent men were, this alone could not produce the deliberations and agreements between them which are necessary for achievement. Language is an instrument of collective thought. Before man's arrival on the earth, it did not exist. And what is it? Barely a breath, a few noises strung together. And the sounds of it in themselves are senseless. Between this vessel and the word jug, there is no logical connection. The only thing that gives sense to these sounds is the fact that men have agreed to give them a particular meaning. And so it is with all other words. They are the expressions of agreement between the members of a human group, and only those in the know can understand them. Other groups may agree on quite different sets of sounds to convey the same ideas. So it happens that a language is a kind of wall which encloses a given human company and separates it from all others. And this, perhaps, is why the word has always had a mystical value for man's mind. It is something that unites men even more closely than nationality. Words are bonds between men, and the language they use develops and ramifies according to the needs of their minds. Language, we may say, grows with human thought. A curious thing to note is how few sounds are needed to make up so many words. These can be combined in such an immense number of ways that the words we can make from them are endless. This sound may precede or follow that. Some are voiced, others unvoiced. Some are spoken with the lips closed, others with the lips open. But more astonishing even than that is the power of memory to recollect so vast a quantity of combinations and their meanings. Again, there is the question of thought, which has to be expressed by grouping words together into sentences. The words in these sentences have to be arranged in a particular order. They cannot just be jumbled together, like pieces of furniture in a room. There are rules which guide the hearer as to the intentions of the speaker. To express a thought about something, the speaker must use its names and near this put the adjective. The subject, verb, and object all have their proper positions in the sentence. To get the words right is not enough. Their order is equally important. Just from that little anecdote that I experienced today, I also work as a nanny, and I was looking after a 5-year-old, and I was noticing in her language that her vocabulary and her understanding of the words was completely full and complete, but the way to order them and put them together was still the main struggle. Like, you can see that in children's frustration in their mouths and their bodies not being able to keep up with the thoughts that they're producing and wanting to express. So yeah, those rules and the pattern of language I see is developed so much later than the actual recollection and memory of the sounds. We can easily test the truth of this by taking a clearly expressed sentence and writing it on a strip of paper. Then cut out the words separately. When mixed, their meaning vanishes. In a different order, the same words have no meaning. It follows that the order of the words must also be agreed upon by men. Hence, language is truly the expression of a kind of superintelligence. As a matter of history, languages have sometimes grown so cumbersome that on the breakup of the civilization they served, they have fallen into disuse, and being so hard to remember, have disappeared. At first sight, one would think that language was something given us by nature, but we are forced to conclude that it is something over and above nature. It is a creation superimposed on nature, an intelligent product of the mass mind. It spreads in all directions, like an unlimited network by which everything can be expressed. With a language like Sanskrit or Latin, we may study it for years and still not master it completely. It is a mystery impossible to fathom. To carry out any of their projects, men must agree, and for this they need a common tongue. Speech is a real thing, yet of all the instruments that man uses, it is the least substantial. The attention we have given to this problem, how this instrument becomes acquired by man, leads us to believe that it is the child who absorbs language. The reality of this absorption is something deep and puzzling, to which not enough attention has yet been given. All we usually say is that children live with people who speak, so naturally they come to speak themselves. But considering the innumerable complications of most languages, this idea is very superficial. Nonetheless, it has held the field for thousands of years without the slightest advance being made on it. Study of the problem suggests still another observation. It is that a language, however difficult we may find it, was at one time spoken by the uneducated classes in the land of its origin. Latin, for example, which is hard even for those of us who speak one of its modern derivatives, was originally spoken by the slaves of imperial Rome. Its complications then were just as great as they are now. And did not untaught labourers in the fields use the same language as the 3-year-old children in the Roman palaces? And what of India, where many years ago, any tiller of the soil, any wanderer in the jungle, expressed himself naturally in Sanskrit? The curiosity which these questions awaken has led to the making of careful studies of language development, as it can be observed in actual children. I say development, not teaching, for the mother does not teach her child language. It develops naturally, like a spontaneous creation. Also, its development follows fixed laws, which are the same in all children, that don't have, obviously, any birth defects or actual brain differences. The various periods of the child's life show the same stages in the level reached, a thing repeated for children all over the world, regardless of whether the language be simple or complex. There are still many tongues of extreme simplicity spoken by primitive people, and the children reach the same level in these as in the much more difficult ones. All children pass through a period in which they can only pronounce syllables. Then they pronounce whole words, and finally, they use to perfection all the rules of syntax and grammar. The differences between masculine and feminine, singular and plural, between tenses and moods, prefixes and suffixes, are all applied in the children's speech. The tongue may be complex, have many exceptions to the rules, and yet the child who absorbs it learns it as a whole and can use it at the same age as the African child, who uses only the few words of his primitive vocabulary. Let me just see how long I'm going on here. 11 minutes. If we watch the production of the different sounds, we find that they also follow laws. All the sounds that occur in words are produced by the use of certain mechanisms. Sometimes the nose acts in unison with the throat. At others, the muscles of the tongue and of the cheeks have to be coordinated. Various parts of the body take part in the construction of this mechanism, which functions perfectly for the mother tongue, the tongue learned by the child. Yet in a foreign country, we adults cannot even detect all the sounds we hear, far less reproduce them vocally. We can only use the machinery of our own language. No one but a child can construct his own machinery, and so learn to perfection as many languages as he hears spoken around him. Alright, I'm going to do one more page and then I think that'll be good for the first video. This is not the result of conscious work. It is something done at an unconscious level in the mind. It begins and unfolds in the darkest depths of the unconscious, and when it emerges, it is as a fixed acquisition. We adults can only imagine what it is like to want to learn a language consciously. We then apply ourselves deliberately to this task, but we must try to cultivate another idea. It is the idea of natural mechanisms, or rather of mechanisms superimposed upon nature, which act apart from consciousness. And these wonderful mechanisms, or series of them, develop at depths not directly accessible to our observation. The only evidence we have of them is external, but this is fully visible, being common to all mankind. So that kind of, I guess, an example of that would be like we don't see all that of a language our child understands, but we can only see the maybe like few dozen words they could use and then assume that that's all they know from those external displays, I think. Striking as the whole picture is, some of its details are even more impressive. One is that in the speech of all people, there is continuity of pronunciation from one generation to the next. Another is that complex languages are absorbed with the same ease as simple ones. No child finds it tiring to learn his mother tongue. His mechanism brings it into being as a single whole, no matter what it may be. This absorption of language by the child makes me think of an analogy which, though not very close, may provide us with an inkling of what goes on in the child's mind. Suppose we are needing a picture of something. Either we can make this ourselves using pencil and paints, or we can take a photograph, which depends on quite a different principle. The picture, in that case, becomes recorded on a sensitized plate, which can receive the image of 10 people just as readily as one. It all happens in a flash, and to take 1,000 people gives it no more trouble. To take a photo of 1,000 people gives the camera no more trouble. The work is the same whether we apply it to the title page of a book or to a page of closely set print in foreign characters. The chemicals react to anything, simple or complex, in the fraction of a second. But for us to draw a human figure takes time, and the more figures we draw, the longer it takes. If it takes us so long to copy the title page of a book, it will take far longer to do a page of it in very small type. Not only that, but the photographic image becomes imprinted on the plate in total darkness. The developing process is also done in the dark. It is fixed in the dark, and then only can it be shown in the open. But by that time, it has become unalterable. I think that is a very good analogy in displaying that, like, after that development of the photo, it's like our mother tongue, then that's unalterable. How she explained, like, how an adult can go to a foreign country and those sounds be completely indistinguishable because our mother tongue has already been set. And it's so difficult for us to open up that absorbent learning again, or it's impossible once that's gone from your childhood. So that permanence of the photo, once the chemicals have developed in the dark, those structures have developed in the dark, secret parts of the child's mind that we can't observe because they can't express it yet. I like that analogy. And I think that is a good point to stop at right now. We are on page 113 now, and I will try to record another video soon. Thank you very much. Lots of love.